want to start out, as promised, I did hang something up. One thing in our week two, and it's week two for GoBig and week two for the Grady home here. So I want to start this session with your core, which is looking at what is a choice that you made. It can be one that you mentioned on last week's call. It can be something that just comes to your mind. So start with your core, your choice. What was the outcome of that choice? The ripples from that choice. So what else did it sort of manifest? And then what do you see as possible now that previously was not possible before that choice? So we've got time for one personal and one professional, or you can just pick one if you prefer. But let's go through that. Keith, you're on here first, so why don't we start with you? I know that one of your choices was reading. You can talk about that one or a different one, and if we can get that one in on the professional side as well.
Yeah, sure. So reading that book, Start With Why, that was I made a commitment last week openly that I'll read 30 minutes a day. So basically for the past 6 weeks, sometimes I read, 30 minutes a day, or sometimes if I skip a day, like for instance, like for the last 2 days, I read it for like exactly about an hour, right before going to bed. And just a little bit of the reason for me choosing that as the as a choice was, professionally, I'm at this stage where, in order for me to get to the next level, I really have to kind of work, uh, you know, what's inside, right, of me. So I wanted to, work on that. So I believe that will impact my professional life and personal life at the same time. So
what have you noticed thus far? Have you noticed any outcome on your internally or externally since committing to that choice?
Yeah, so I was able to focus more on reading itself, right? Because before that, I knew it was on my to-do list, but I just didn't know when I'm gonna do it. Therefore, it was always like kind of like a lingering, right? So I know while I'm doing something else, I feel like, oh no, I have to read this. While I'm focusing on something else, it's always on my mind. And before, when I was also reading, I wasn't sure if this is what I should be doing right now, because I can be doing something else, right? Like studying for my designation and stuff like that.
Right.
But once I made my mind to just solely focus, for 30 minutes or an hour of a day strictly on this, I realized that, reading becomes a lot more fun, and I feel like I'm digesting a lot more. So I'm kind of like writing notes and like really like action items, out of that book. So I feel like I'm getting a lot more. And some of the ripples is other to-do list are on a better schedule.
Okay.
Right? Because I kind of like knock this out, and all the other things can go on, some other time slot. And I know that they're gonna be waiting for me. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know why I chose reading this book before, before going to bed, but it's been working out really well.
Great.
And at the same time, I can, as much as I can focus on reading itself, I experienced more increased focus on other things, like especially studying. Yeah.
Great. That's great. What can happen sometimes when we give an intention to do something like I'm going to read today, and you don't read, it provides like an energy suck. And so it's this suck that I didn't read today, and you end up, consciously or unconsciously kind of beating yourself up, and it wastes energy for other stuff that you're committed to. So when you follow through and you do it, it just provides this release of energy. I did what I said I would do, and other stuff tends to be more focused as well. Sounds like that's what happened. Anything in the on the professional side, choice that you made that comes to mind?
So this is part of my professional commitment.
The reading, got it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the reason I chose this. Although it's just kind of like a personal hobby to read, but this actually starts with more on the business side, right?
What's one distinction you've gained out of that book that's helping your business?
So that will help me with my, so some of the action items I have is, when I create my, elevator speech or just overall presentation and a mission statement for my firm, right? I'm basically like revisiting all that.
Great.
Right? Because this book really, really makes sense. I'm not just reading it so that I can tell people that I read this book, but I'm actually, really want to be able to digest everything and actually put into action.
Mm-hmm.
I have a list of, handful of books that I really want to kind of master, if that makes sense, and just put it into action. So that really helps me with my business side, how I just operate my business, my practice in general, because that's really important. All the technical side of things, it can be learned, if you have time. But this type of, more like your value proposition and why you do what you do, just all the basic stuff, which is also important.
Absolutely.
It's really helping me shape those things
Great.
to the next level, I feel. And what's now possible, I can actually finish a book as planned when I bought them. So I'm really halfway through. And as
Great.
much as I told you, I have this tendency to buy books. And another one that follows that is I read a book, but I've never finished it. 2/3 of the book, I feel like I get it.
Mm-hmm.
So I never get to the end. So I'm already halfway through, and I think that I can really finish this book to the end.
Great.
And I feel like I can focus and finish that. So
Great.
that
The
really
power of incompletion versus being incomplete is there's an energy to that as well. Following through and completing it, even if it seems like you even going the final third, even seems like you got the gist or something to the sense of completion. Awesome. Anything else you want to say about that?
Was that the question for me?
Yeah, can I ask, is that author Simon Sinek?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to download it.
Awesome.
Yeah, great book. Yeah, from the start. Yeah.
Great.
It's read by the author. I like to do audiobooks.
Oh, you do the audio, yeah.
And it's read by the author. I prefer it when it's read by the author, so that's good.
Yeah, that's actually what we're working on in the studio next week is an audio version of The Ripple Effect read by the author. So, yeah. So Kathleen, what's you can talk about the choice you said last week, or something you did personally or professionally, and go through the core. What was the choice?
I have two of them. I had really two huge goals on this past week. I'm going to see if I can switch this to my other screen so I don't have to look over there. I can be looking at you guys. Okay, can you guys still see me?
Yeah.
Okay. So my first one was to complete all my CE requirements and all my firm elements before this week, because I'm going to go have a little 5-day weekend with my sister starting tomorrow. She's flying up from San Diego. We're going to go to the Oregon.
Great.
Anyway, my CE is amazingly enormous amount of CE because of my professional designations and because of all my licenses in various states. So it was about 40 hours or so of CE credits. And then we had 9 firm elements with our firm to complete, which were arduous, and none of them tell you how long they're going to be when you start them. So it's really a tedious process. I didn't fall asleep through any of them this time, which is rather amazing. And I got it all done. So
wow.
Just tons and hours that I got done. And I got it done. So I'm pretty psyched about that.
That's fantastic. That was in the last 7 days you did all that work.
Yeah, last weekend and then this weekend I finished it up. On Friday I went through to get all my licenses renewed and went to do my CFP renewal as well, which isn't due until the 30th of this month, and realized there was still an additional 6.5 hours of CE for that particular designation. And it's 32 total, and I thought I'd done it all. So, but I also have a certified divorce financial analyst designation, and that's 15 hours a year, which doesn't come due until next May. But I was able to find a class that satisfied both of those and whip that out this weekend. So it's all done.
Great.
And I won't have to worry about that for a while. And the firm elements are huge too. They're not due until I think the end of October, but hey, they're behind me, they're done. So it's really nice to get all that done.
So let me ask you a question. How does that block of inputted time and work, how does that compare to what might have happened in the standard course of things? And as the way Kathleen's been operating within the organization naturally, what could have happened? How might that have happened differently?
Well, what happens is that you end up needing to do it on a, at the last minute, which is not fun. And often really run tired. But with COVID, I feel like I'm getting better sleep, although I do have a cold right now. And I did get tested for COVID on Friday just to make sure it's just a cold. And fortunately it is. But it's just really awesome to not have that hanging over my head and still needing to get done. And it's just not even an issue. So.
Right. So I definitely heard choice, heard outcome, just the way it's made you feel. Ripples is just, yeah. You talked about some of that. What do you see possible now that this is complete?
Well, I mean, it just it just opens up my time completely to focus on the things that I'd really be rather spending my time on.
Like a 5-day weekend.
With my business and my 5.
Okay. Awesome. And you had one other choice, right? You want to talk about
do.
that?
So that was my to-do list, and I was going to get through all of my papers. I didn't quite accomplish that goal. I cannot believe how challenging it is, and not for, the good thing is I actually have started using the timer on my phone and say, okay, this is my 30 minutes. I'm going to work on this. Not do anything else until that timer goes off. That's actually really cool. And I did that and even put a couple of hours in this weekend on it as well. And I'm not done at all. But the cool thing is I've made a ton of progress.
Right.
And every time I grab a piece of paper and feel like I've completely transferred whatever is on there that may be of significance in some way in my life, I just am so excited when I can put it in the shredder pile. So pretty psyched about that. Also, as I think I told you guys, I've been listening to this book, Getting Things Done.
Right.
And the guy that does it, Alan something, is it?
David Allen.
He, it's all about getting it someplace where you can take your next action. So I've been getting his stuff on my calendar to get done, and on Friday, an email popped up to work on financial planning documentation. And it was a reminder, and I had an email attached to it. I looked at it and I'm like, oh God, I don't have time for this. I'm like, no, you actually carved out this time on your calendar to do this. So do it. And I did, and it was awesome to take the time to review this material. I got a lot of information. I feel so much more empowered and knowledgeable, and like I can take it and move it forward. Whereas, I just haven't just allowed myself the space to do that, but I booked it on my calendar. I mean, it's not that long, it's like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something. It wasn't that long time, but it was really fantastic. So
that's awesome.
I'm getting through a lot more of that stuff on my calendar and just to take care of it. I've gotten a couple of referrals, and then even today, and then, following up with referrals right away. But today I got a referral literally out of the blue from somebody who said we had a meeting a while back, and I was able to, in a couple of seconds, sift through my electronic folders and find a folder on this couple that I met with in 2013. Is that just crazy? From 7 years ago, and
That's awesome.
I had all their information. So anyway, I'd say, when with this business, as I'm sure Keith and Ava have learned, the more you work, the harder you work, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it constantly. So you're never done. You just create more work.
Right.
It's absolutely never done. Um, but it's really rewarding to feel a little bit more on top of things, and it makes me feel much more purposeful and enthusiastic about getting things done because I have to report back to you guys.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's part of the program. So great. So I want to give you just this real simple distinction, one you're probably aware of as a guideline. A goal is an accomplishment. It's something that's specifically done, and you said you didn't hit your goal.
Right.
This is not so much you will achieve goals throughout this program, but that's distinguished from a choice that you and you alone control. We don't really control how quickly or even easily we get to our goals, or even if we get to them. But what we do control is whether or not we do the work. And so the choices that we make are not necessarily, I will achieve this. The choice is, I will do this or not do this for X amount of time per day. So I'll do this for 30 minutes a day. So if you did that, that's to be, yes, you want to celebrate your goals, absolutely. But what there's a focus on is you did the work. You didn't get to your goal yet, but you're still way further along than you would have been if you didn't do that choice, that commitment.
Indeed.
Awesome. And AV is joining us from her virtual beach. Welcome. How are you?
How are you guys? My apologies for the delayed.
Welcome. You're blowing in the wind. Fantastic. So AV, we'll start today with a choice you made, an outcome, the ripples, and now what you see as possible expectations. So the spotlight is on you. What's something that you did between last week and this week? I know we talked about the devotional. What's one choice you made personally or professionally that you want to share with us?
Honestly, I feel all over the place only because I flew from New York to Florida. So just relinking back to my family got me off focused, and I kind of jumped back in last night to kind of recover. So this has been thus far my worst of the weeks, only because it's just so much going on. So I said to my mom, I know you want me to stay over your house, but I need to turn on the light in my house because there's no light, there's no refrigerator, there's nothing. And I just need to stay alone because I need to focus. So now I'm noticing how much focus of not noise or people around me and distractions I need to have in order to keep going. So
yeah, well, you've just shifted your structure outside of the structure you had before, right?
Right.
So there will come with that a lot of distraction, a lot of disruption. So it's up to you to reclaim that structure, to readjust that structure in such a way that you can still move the needle forward in the experience of life that you want. So that being said, all good, come as you are. Was there anything that you did differently from last week to this week that's had a positive impact on your business or your life?
I did my homework. I was very into my home. I was very intuitive with you guys. I actually joined this call yesterday at 2:00.
So you were ahead of the curve, right? One day
yes.
early. So what was the outcome of doing your homework?
I realigned my purpose.
Okay, so say more about that.
I emailed you, I called, I tried to reach out to the team to get the homework, and I sat there and I in total quiet and really spoke to my heart about what is it that where my journey is. So I reclaimed my focus to help women financially. So I call it the art of financial literacy. And Yeah, I like the exercise that we had. So I was able to email it to you. And I think just staying focused on where I want to go as far as my intuition, inner intuition is coming to, it's giving me more of a purpose to keep going, to share my story or to get clients, if you will.
Have you seen any ripples from that this week? Any appointments maybe that would have been set, different energy level, what's possible now, that type of thing?
I dropped the ball this week, but I definitely made some adjustments. I have a 4 o'clock today, and I had a closing meeting yesterday that I made it to. So I just got to increase my numbers, but with that being said, I was on a call yesterday and I spoke to Joshua today, letting him know where am I growing, where I should be growing at as far as training. Where's the hole per se? So I noticed the hole in my business, and I'm ready to take action to learn that.
Great. Keep that intention with you on the call for today. Thank you and welcome. Glad you're here. So I'm going to share with you my screen, and we're going to go to the GoBig blueprint. Everything that we do, everything we have done, everything we will do can be lodged somewhere on this blueprint. We've started with this focus, with looking at the experience of life you want more of, what are the emotional characteristics you want more of, who do you want to be more of, what type of practice. So getting clear on that and making choices from that reclaimed focus that AV just talked about. So you've made some of these choices. We'll carve out some more. Once these are made, we want to look at structures, models, tools, and standards. We'll talk about the standards a little bit today. Your structure, AV talked about a structure that's been changed. And so it's when structures change, whether it's changed externally through an event like COVID, or whether it's changed because you are in a different part of the country, or you've got a different scenario in life, it's up to you and I to readjust that structure in such a way that the disciplines, the choices, the standards are still fulfilled in a way that works for our lifestyle, for our personality, for who we are. We can look to models for that, and then there can be tools that support that process along the way. And then from here is looking at the support people that can help you with those choices and structure. So one of my support people is on the call. You met Melissa earlier today. You met Melinda on the call last week. Looking up, you want to look at who is in your corner that you can go to. These are coaches and mentors. They may be people that you pay. They may be people that you just are able to go to. But typically we have people and resources at our fingertips that we don't necessarily always contact. So when you're up to something, when you make choices, when you're moving toward the direction of life that you want to think, well, who are the people that can pour into me, that I can ask for help, that I can inquire, that can support me in that decision. Partners are people that may be in your business, maybe they're in a different business, people that you can lock arms with to move forward. You potentially have a couple of partners on this call with you, the three of you that are on this call. They could be peers within the organization. I've got some business, I just started an accountability group here in Atlanta. Kathleen maybe knows this name. Keith and AV may be too young to remember this name, but there's a Hall of Fame quarterback who has a business in Atlanta. His name's Fran Tarkenton. He played for the Minnesota Vikings, and I was on his TV show and blog, and his son kind of runs the business. He's about my age, and so Matt Tarkenton and I, along with a couple other people, we just started a little personal and professional accountability group. We're getting together, once a month is the structure for this, in one of our homes, and just looking on how we can support each other personally and or professionally. There's no financial investment in that. That's just something we created. We just got together and we're co-creating, co-developing these things. These would be people I would call peers and partners. You can look at who are those people, who are the people that you trust, that you can go to, that you can lock arms with, that you can share a vision with, share your goals with. A specific type of partner is an accountability partner, which means somebody that you have an accountability to outside of here. I'm one of those once a week at least, but you could have someone inside or outside the company that you are accountable to with your choices. You say, hey, I'll text you every day. I'll call you before 10 p.m. I'll let you know that I did what I said I would do. You can have partners in the gym, partners in any choice that you have, people that support you with that accountability. And then people, the mentees are people that look up to you. We all have people looking up to us, whether we're aware of it or not. Who are those people who look to you for leadership, who look to you for guidance, who look for you to support? It could be your children, could be your family, could be people in the business that are younger than you, that are newer than you, but we all have people that we have the ability and the capability to pour into. Here's the interesting thing about mentees. We teach what we want to learn. And so when we're pouring into another person, we actually support our own self-expression and our own personal growth by pouring into other people. So who are those people that you're pouring into, the people that look up to you, and how can you put more into them? So we'll unpack this a little bit on our call today, and we'll start. The homework today is to start filling out these structures, tools, models, and standards that are consistent with each of your choices that you make during this 8-week process. The one that I want to put a little bit of time on right now is standards. So these are performance standards. So I'll come back to you right now. Performance standards are very simply specific choices that you can measure. They don't have to be 0 to 10 overnight, but things that you can implement that will consistently move the needle. So Kathleen implemented one last week. It was called 30 minutes a day on this execution of organization, getting stuff in the right places on the calendar. She also had a commitment to continuing education. So any performance standard, you want to look there. I'll give you some criteria for this. Number one is you want it to be more than what you're doing, more or less on the other hand. So I'm going to do more of this or less of this. Less Netflix, less social media, less sleep, whatever it is that robs you of productive time. You can look at less of that and more of something else. Brian Tracy, who was one of my first major mentors in my life, he had a great line. He said, it's impossible to do more of something without doing less of something else. And so you want to look at what can you do more of, what can you do less of, how can you think more in the direction that you want to think and think less in the direction of what it all comes back to that more or less method. So starting with that more or less method and with your higher purpose, which we haven't really gotten any feedback yet on, which I will in just a few minutes. Coming from that, some choices will tend to follow. There'll be things kind of pulling at you, gnawing at you. Oh yeah, I should probably do a little bit more of this, a little bit less of this. Once you get to that choice, I want to give you a simple way to articulate it in a way it's quantifiable, it's time bounded, it's measurable, and it moves the needle. So number one is you want to look at more / less, more of what you're doing more or less. I may have shared this story with a couple of you one-on-one, maybe one of you one-on-one. I don't think the other two of you have heard this, but I was working out with a trainer years ago. This is maybe 7-8 years ago. and I was struggling with bone on both my hips. It was very uncomfortable, but I was doing it anyway. I was going to the gym. We just kind of work around it. And this dude's name is, I think I'd share this with Keith. This dude's name is Choppa. He's a street guy from Philadelphia, very colorful. He's very proud of his street heritage, and he's got a very interesting way of communicating. I was limping around one day, and Choppa said to me, he said, "Yo, man, what's your problem?" And I said, "Well, Choppa, you know, I have no cartilage in my left hip." And Choppa said, "You need more cartilage, eat more of that," which means eat more cartilage. And so actually, as I tried this, I started eating cartilage, chicken cartilage, beef cartilage. I ordered shark cartilage from a supplement store online. It really is a thing. I ate all the cartilage that I could. And roughly 2 years later, I had double hip replacement surgery. But that is not the point. The point is there is a lot of wisdom in this eat more of that. So if you want to look for what to do more of and what to do less of, think of a time when you felt fully self-expressed, when you felt closer to this higher self, which we talked about last week, as defined by, you just feel unstoppable. If you've got a sports background, you know, you feel like you're in the zone. I mean, life is just effortless. Kathleen, you're attracting and not promoting. Like stuff just comes out of the blue. Like somebody from 7 years ago gives you a call and says, "Hey, can you help me with this?" That's not a, own that, that's not a coincidence. When you move toward your higher self, stuff just happens. Stuff just happens more often, quote unquote, out of the blue, because you're accessing your higher self more often. So part of this eat more of that is to think, well, when did I experience that? When was I present to peace and love and joy and power and unstoppability? Okay, it was high school. Okay, great, whatever. It was high school. So what was it in high school? What were you doing? Was it sports? Was it a conversation? What was the environment? Were there choices that you made during that time that supported that experience? For me, I'm just expressing this to you on a personal level, not saying this is your thing, but it's one of my things. On a personal level, when I'm at my best, it is always, without exception, accompanied by consistent, rigorous, intense physical exercise. When I let that slide, I let my life slide. It's like it's a recipe for me to not be at my best. So when I look back at my background, there's always sport. When I was at my best, I was working out. I was an athlete. I was engaged in competitive activities. And so when that was missing from my life, a lot of other stuff became missing as well. So think of a time right now when you were fully self-expressed. What were you doing more of? What were you doing less of? And this can provide some hints and some clues on what you may want to take on doing more of now or less of now. So that's number one criteria, is more/less. Make it quantifiable. Number two is manageable. So part of manageable is quantifiable. You know if you've done it, you know if you haven't done it. This is very different than a goal, as we talked about with Kathleen just a few minutes ago. A goal is not technically, quote unquote, manageable. You can't actually flip your fingers and achieve a goal. If you could, it wouldn't be a goal. So you may not be able to manage the speed, the ease, the velocity, the struggle that goes with getting a goal. But here's what you can manage. You can manage the amount of time you put into it. You can manage your structure around that time. So make it manageable / that means quantifiable, number one. It also means doable. So it may be going, we've got a structure for everything in our life, a standard, if you will. If you look at your personal standards right now, we've got 3 people on the call. So I'm just going to ask you, let's just take a physical exercise standard, since we've been talking about that. We have a standard 0 to 7 per week, the amount of times we exercise per week. We may not call it a standard, but we all have one. It's 0 to 7. So what's your standard, if you don't mind, for physical exercise, at least 20 minutes a day? What's been your average over the last 6 weeks? Keith, what has it been for you? Average number of times you've exercised per week in the last 6 weeks.
45 minutes a day.
At least 20 minutes. The definition is at least 20 minutes a day. How many times have you exercised on average in the last 6 weeks?
For like 4 times a week.
4 times a week. Okay, Kathleen, how about you? You're on mute. Let me unmute you. I think I unmuted you. Okay. You're still on. There we go.
There you go. I'd have to say exercise probably per week, 6.8
Wow. Okay.
days for an hour each
Awesome.
day. So I'm pretty disciplined. It's not that I'm disciplined, I just do it.
So clearly that one's dialed in. Fantastic. AV?
The minimum would be 3 times a week for
3 times a week. Great.
20 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So whatever that is, usually when I'm in, if I'm talking with a big group of people, usually there's somebody in there at 0 or 1. You guys got this pretty dialed in. So rarely would I recommend that you go, from 3 to 7 overnight. Maybe you just dial in something doable. Maybe you go from 3 to you go from maybe just 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week, something like that. That's minimum doable, and it's a line in the sand, something that it's uncompromised as a minimum standard. There might be an ideal, but the minimum is a line in the sand, not to be compromised. So number 1 is more/less. Number 2 is manageable/doable. And then number 3, and this is one that a lot of people miss, is medium term, which means it's got a beginning and an end. So we've got a beginning and an end on this program. It ends up being, give or take, whenever you plugged in here, it ends up being about 90 days because we have a call in the front, we'll have a call in the back. We've got 8 dedicated classes or whatever, sessions like this. So you could put a term on this period of time that we're working together. You could call it right now to the conclusion of week 8, that's 7 weeks, and say for the next 7 weeks, I will do X, whatever X is, X amount of days per week, X amount of time per day, and I'll do it for 7 weeks. Definition of a medium term is 21 days at the minimum, 90 days at the absolute maximum. The reason for this is very difficult for the brain to get its head around. I'll do this for an indefinite period of time, or even if I said I'll do this for a year. One of the reasons why New Year's resolutions don't work is because the term is too long. It almost feels like forever. I won't do this for a year. I will do this for a year. I'll be this or not. It feels like forever. When you put a time bounded on it, 7 weeks, 6 weeks, 60 days, 90 days at the most, you've got a beginning and an end. So for example, you've heard of these programs, P90X, it's 90 days. You've got 21-day cleanse, there's a 24-day reboot, there's Whole 30. Our core program is called 40 Days of Focus, which, by the way, Keith, that is Kathleen's done it. Part of your program is you have access to that whenever you want. You do one personal discipline every day, 40 consecutive days, and pay attention to the impact of that choice in every area of your life. It's got a beginning and an end. There's 66-day programs. There's 60-day programs. Here's the point. It's not forever. There's a timeline on it. Be careful about this thing. I'll never do this again. You just put a beginning and an end, you do the work. So let me give you an example. This was, I guess, 3 years ago. My wife, she has somehow talked me into a cleanse with very little effort, like 6 different times. The first time she did it, we had only been dating like 3 weeks. She's like, honey, you want to do a cleanse? I'm like, she didn't even call me honey back then. She's like, you want to do the cleanse with me? I'm like, sure. So the next day I'm eating celery and broccoli all day, and it takes me forever just to chew the food. But recently, and I've done this 6 times with her. So recently, I think this is a couple years back, says, how about we do a New Year's cleanse? There's some more on one side, less on the other. The less is there's no, there's no sugar, no gluten, no dairy, no alcohol, no meat, no pork, no fun, I think was actually on that list. That's all of the lesses. And then on the more side, it's a lot more water, a lot more greens, and there's supplements you do every day. The supplements arrive 6 days in. So according to my wife's awesome some logic and wisdom. We're on a 36-day cleanse because, of course, we have to do the 30 days of supplements along with the cleanse. But here's the point. You lock it in for 36 days. You lock it in for the course of this 8 weeks or 90 days or whatever you say it is. You put that time frame in it. You lock it in. You're uncompromised. You allow that program, this program, your program, whatever you want to call it, you allow that standard to live somewhere and you commit to it full on. This is why you don't make it 2 hours a day or even an hour a day, 30 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, 20 extra dials a day, whatever that is, you put it, make it doable. Maybe you exceed it, but you never fall below and you lock that in. So this is an outline for your performance standards. We'll outline that on the handout we sent to you after this. More or less of what you're doing, manageable and medium term. Simplest term you can put on it here, you can put on now to the end of this 8 weeks. It would be a perfect 7-week all-in time frame. If you want to put some exceptions in here, you can do that. You just want to articulate them in advance. So Kathleen, you say, I'm on vacation, all bets are off. I'm with my family, all bets are off. But every working day, this is on for business. Every personal day with these exceptions, this is on for personal. So you clarify the exceptions instead of having the exceptions take over you. So that being said, I want to zigzag back to higher purpose, which was your assignment for last week, and see what you got out of that. And then I'll work with each of you on a specific performance standard, make sure it hits the criteria, something you've been thinking about, maybe something you haven't articulated yet. We'll work with each of you on carving out a performance standard. You can tell me what the exceptions are, and you can also say if it's going to be between now and the next 8 weeks, or if it's a different time frame, no more than 90 days. We can do a personal or a professional, and we should be able to get all 3 of you complete on at least one. And it may be very, very simple and quick. It may take a little bit of back and forth, but let's zigzag back to the higher purpose. Did you do it? If you did, what came out of that for you? AV?
I did do it and I was very focused, but I noticed that my personal goal is to help women, and I need to find a bridge between what I'm doing now and being in purpose, within my purpose, you know?
Let's forget about the bridge for a second. I know that's important, but let's lock on to the exercise of your higher purpose. Those questions, when do you feel most alive? You went through those questions?
Yes, sir.
Great. So what came out of that? Forget about the bridge for a second. What came out of that for you?
I'm going to read it to you. Or you want me to read the answers, or you
No,
want
just
me to
read a couple of them that resonate with you, not the whole thing.
Okay. So I'm most alive when I'm speaking to someone. I like to be supportive, positive, clever, I even sound intelligent and confident sometimes.
Okay.
The qualities I want to develop is listening skills. And what do I naturally do that affect others in a positive way? I like to celebrate people's achievements, cheer them on, and give them a roadmap of hope.
Okay, awesome. So I hear at least one choice that can come out of that. Maybe not necessarily a standard. A standard would be something you do consistently. A choice would just be something that you do. It could be a one-time thing that moves the needle in the area. So something like our AV said, you said you like to celebrate people's achievements. You can look at who can I celebrate right now and how can I celebrate with them? How can I help them celebrate their achievement? And you put a time on the board and you celebrate their achievement with them, reach out and make it happen. So that's consistent with your higher purpose. Is there anything else you want to say about that? What did that bring out for you? Or are you complete? Okay. Kathleen, did you do the exercise and what came out of it for you?
No, totally forgot to do
Okay.
that.
Great, no problem. So that's something that you may want to as you're working toward, we'll get at least one dialed in, but as you're working toward your performance standard, here's the.
Well, having said that, there is one here that really resonates with me that I've been holding and didn't realize it was on here. I just read it. Is who do you most admire and why?
Mm-hmm.
Most admire. It depends on what circumstance, what you're looking at. But most recently, one of my colleagues was highlighted in on a national basis with our company, and she's just awesome. She's just fantastic. I really admire her, and she's so disciplined. And
What's her name? I wonder if I know her.
Her name's Heather.
Okay.
And I just said, there's no reason. I mean, you're just as good as Heather, maybe better than Heather. You just need to own it.
Yeah.
You just need to own it. And the why is because she really is over the top great at follow through, and just is always on it with her follow through. And her skill level, I'm probably higher skilled or equally skilled as she is. So that's not it. It's just the pure follow through. And so just kind of been channeling that through this process as well, and just owning that.
Great.
Anyway, that I just printed this out, so I'll do it.
Great. It's all good. So take some time I encourage you to take some time with that between now and the next week. Heather is a person that could potentially be within this GoBig blueprint as one of the people in that mentor area. Doesn't mean it could just be as simple as, could we have a conversation? And you can learn from her, grow from her, get some input from her. And not that she's quote unquote better than you, but perhaps she's got some insight and some feedback and some input that would support you right now with where you are, since that's a person that you have looked up to on some level. So that would be, my coaching to you would be reach out to her and see if she's willing to have a conversation, and just and ask her some questions on how you can grow in that direction, potentially. Fantastic. Keith, we'll go to you. Did you do it, and what was the outcome?
Yes, I did. And so to clarify, when you say outcome, are you specifically referring to the answers to this, or?
No, just anything that it brought up for you. How did it help you? Was it what did you get out of it? That type of thing.
Yeah, so it definitely helped me because I think those questions are very, intentionally designed, right? So while I was going through it, it really makes me think, about what's really important to me, right? And what really moves me, what really drives me, and even more like who I want to be, right? So while I was going through it, I feel like I'm already that person, right? And because there's something that, I know I want to be, and certain things that I know are important to me already, but being caught up in just a daily stuff, it kind of like got pushed off to the sideline, and I didn't realize how important these are. But by going through this, it's a good reminder that yes, these are what's really important to me. Right.
Good. So both the more or less and the higher purpose exercise do two things. Number one, they may lead you to a specific, like, obvious choice. Number two is they will fuel your choice once you've made it. That's really the power. Simon Sinek, he talks about the power of why. It's having that why drive you. And so it does two things. Number one, it will give you some obvious choices, and number two, it will provide thrust for those choices once you make them. The more consistently you're focused on your why, your purpose, your higher self, your more or less, then it drives those disciplines, and the two work together. So I want to work with each of you on at least one performance standard. It can be one that's not quite articulated yet, or it can be one brand new. It doesn't matter on the personal side or the professional side. If you're guessing which one it is, just pick one. If you're thinking it's probably professional, then pick that. So Keith, we're on you. So let's work with you on a performance standard, a choice you've been thinking about, either that you're thinking about right now, or you've been thinking about for some time, one that's not fully implemented. Let's put it into that criteria of choice right now. What's the area, and is there a choice that that comes to mind?
So is that kind of what I want to develop? Is that
So from your more or less method and from your higher purpose, is there a choice that you've been considering implementing? We want to carve that out into a performance standard.
okay?
Let me start with
Can you just give me a
Kathleen.
minute to think about it? And
Absolutely. I'm completely putting you on the spot. Let me start with Kathleen. We've done a little bit of work, pre-work on this even before the call. So Kathleen, what's a performance standard, one that we've articulated or one that we haven't, that we're going to work with your exceptions and everything. We're going to carve this thing, put it in a nice shiny box, and that box is going to be your box between now and the next 8 weeks. So what's an area? Could be some of the cleanup, could be personal, could be professional, something you've been thinking about that's not yet fully implemented.
Honestly, I'm not even sure what you're referring to in regard to the words performance standard.
A performance standard is a specific measurable choice over a period of time.
So is that my 30 minutes a day?
Exactly. So it's 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, 20 minutes a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah,
So
30
forgive me
minutes.
for not
Yeah.
clarifying that. It's a specific choice that's consistently implemented from somewhere between 21 to 90 days.
So definitely 30 minutes a day on my kind of to-dos. I also have implemented my weekly meetings with my assistant in getting a slightly better process in place for for to-dos for her. So yeah, those two things, but it's part of one really.
Good. So in the 30 minutes a day, you might want to look at the next 7 weeks and say those are on for the non-family times, and just give yourself that time to say I'm off the hook for those days, and just quantify it in advance. So you're not thinking I should be doing that stuff when I'm with family, and that'll give you the flexibility up front to not be going back on what you said you would do type thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I did want to ask you on your 40 days of focus, my impression is that you do want to do that on the weekends as well. Is that correct? Or like on a vacation day?
40 days of focus is every day for 40 consecutive days. That's why it's a personal discipline and not a professional discipline. But here's the thing, Kathleen, there is a reason for the 40 days every day, but listen, it's all made up. Everything's made up. We just make stuff up. We'll just make stuff up. So it's 40 days, and there's a reason it's every day for 40 days. But for the purpose of this performance standard, this 30 minutes a day, you get to say it's 4 days a week, it's 5 days a week, it's 4 days a week, except when I'm with my family. But the point is to articulate it up front and then do what you've articulated, and that eliminates the rub between, oh man, I said I would do it, but I'm not doing it. That energy suck that we talked about with Keith, because you've got the track that you're running on, and then you run on the track that you laid out. So if you can look at your schedule and say, so for example, the next 5 days when you're with your sister, are you committed to do 30 minutes of organization every day?
I will do it on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and I will give myself the option to do it or not on Saturday and Sunday.
Great. So the minimum standard is 5 days a week. The optional is the additional 2 days. And you can say that's going to be the minimum standard the entire next 7 weeks. 5 days a week minimum, 7 days a week maximum. Bam, you got your track. Then it's 30 minutes minimum. It could be 45, it could be 50, but it won't be 29. That's the track. You carve it out, good to go. Now the thing is locking into it and doing it the way you said it would be done. Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. AV, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Let's get you dialed in with a performance standard. Let's stay on the professional side. Something you're not doing or not doing consistently. What's it going to be? The amount of time or the amount of activity, and then amount of days a week between now and let's just say the end of the 8 weeks that we're on this call together.
I'm not making making the calls as I should.
Okay, so let's flip that to what would be a minimum standard on making those calls that is not happening right now. That's more than what, maybe not the ideal, but that's more than what you're doing currently. What's the average
I
number of
should be
calls per week?
making 20 calls a day,
20 calls a day minimum.
minimum.
And where are you right now?
Hold on, let me figure.
Approximately how many calls did you make last week?
No, today I made 7 calls.
All right, we're at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Approximately how many last week? Do you remember? Okay, so this is some coaching to you, AV. If you want to tighten this stuff up, tighten up your recording. Like, know how many calls you made last week. Track it on a spreadsheet, track it on a piece of paper, but track it. So if you were at, so for example, if you were at 20 calls last week, I might encourage you, let's do 60 minimum this week. So you've got a big jump. Maybe you're not at 100, but for the purpose of this time that we have right now, is 10 calls a day more than what you've been currently doing? So is 15 calls more than what you've currently been doing?
So I have to make 40 dials. I have to make 40 dials will get me to do 5 set appointments with 2 possible cancellations, 3 kept. Out of those 3, 1 is a fact finder.
Got it.
That's a day. That's
Got
a
it.
day.
40 dials a day. But you just mentioned 20 dials a day.
I need to pick it up to 20. Yeah, at least.
Okay. So if we call a minimum standard 100 dials per week, minimum, is that more than what you've been doing?
Yes.
Okay. So that would be a place to start, 100 calls per week, and then you dumb it down from there. You can say, you could say a minimum of 10 calls a day, which means the rest have to be made up. You could say a minimum of 20 calls a day, which means every day you got to hit 20. So you want to call it 20 calls a day, 5 days a week? You want to call it 30 calls a day, 3 days a week, and 10 calls in another day?
So the problem is I have problems counting what counts as a call. So a call, if you dial, that doesn't mean that it's an appointment. So I should be focusing on the Granum book, which I spoke to Joshua and let him know that there's a break in the process of me learning or counting the points. I don't know the science of the numbers. So per se, I could make $40 today. That doesn't mean $40 will eventually look into 5 appointments set.
I get that. That's managing results. Right now, we're talking specifically about activity. The results will come if you manage the activity in a way that previously it's unmanaged. Which, number one, means you know how many calls you made last week, and then you were carving out a standard that's higher than that number consistently. The results on some level are unmanageable. We want to create conditions that are favorable for those results to manifest. It's like the gardener planting the seeds, nurturing the soil, getting the weeds out. All this creates conditions favorable for growth. He doesn't make the flowers grow. So you want to create conditions favorable for appointments. That means quality and quantity of activity. Right now, we're talking just about the quantity. We can talk about the quality separately, but let's talk just about the quantity. Performance standard is moving up that needle more than what you're doing. It sounds like 100 dials per week would do that. Is that true? Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. So $100 a week minimum. Do you want to create a daily standard for 5 days a week, 20 calls a day, minimum of 5 days? Is that a standard for you?
20 calls a day, minimum 5 days. Yes.
Got it. Are there any exceptions in the upcoming weeks where you're going to just say, I'm on vacation, I'm not making the calls a day, or you want to make a game time decision on that week by week? Or is it 100?
No, there's no exception this week because I already took Monday and Friday off.
All right. So you want to make it 100 calls a week no matter what, even if you've got a 3-day weekend? Or you want to
Going forward, I have to make 20 calls today, make up for the ones yesterday. So I got to do 40 calls today.
That's not the question. Question is, do you want to make it a minimum standard of 20 calls every business day between now and the end of the 8 weeks?
No, it should go up gradually. So I should be making $40 a day, and it should go up to 200.
Got it. All right. So let's just go for the next week. So let's go for the next week, 100 minimum. By the time you get on this call next week, by Friday or by Sunday of this week, you'll have $100 made, and we can adjust this throughout the program.
Yeah.
We'll still call it a minimum of 100 dials between now
Okay.
and the next 8 weeks. That minimum may go up, but it'll never go down.
Gotcha.
Okay? You're committed to
Yes,
that.
sir.
You
Yes,
heard
sir.
it here. And Keith's going to open up a can on you if you don't do it. So that.
I know.
All right, clear. All right, so Keith, by this time you probably got it just dialed in. This may be a 2-minute conversation, no big deal. If it's 2 minutes or 10 minutes, what's a performance standard as defined by more manageable, or that's quantifiable, and medium term? I'm just calling that term between now and the end of the 8 weeks. You can call it what you want if you want to change it. With what's something that previously was not on the table before this?
So I think I have something that I need to focus on for the next 5 weeks, if that's okay. I just put that on the list.
Great, 5, you just adjusted the term. Great, 5 weeks it is.
Yeah. So I have to study for this particular designation. I do have an exam scheduled for October 26th.
Okay.
So I rescheduled it like 3 times. So it should have already happened, but I'm pushing it back. So October 26th, I put that as a hard deadline time frame. So
what's the standard between now and October 25th for your?
So I at least have to spend 2.5 hours on studying. So I've been doing like about an hour and a half in the morning, just first thing in the morning when I wake up. But I just need to spend a little bit more time, either in the morning or at night. So
is that 5 days a week, 7 days a week?
At this point, it's 7 days a week. No,
so is it 7 days a week between now and the end of the 5 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay, so 7 days a week, 2.5 hours study every day. That is intense. Okay. You heard it here. 2.5 hours a day study, 7 days a week between now and I'm assuming October 25th because the test is the 26th.
Yeah.
All right, so you can use this model for anything. Instead of leaving it haphazard, you just say, okay, I want to get in shape. Great. What's the standard on what you're eating more of and less of? What's the standard on what you're doing more and doing less of? You want to move the needle in your business. What's the standard? You want to clean up the house, do the honey-do less. That's on my end. You just carve out the standard for that, make it more than what you're doing / less, manageable, and put a timeline on it, beginning and an end. The way to kind of combine this with the results, I'll give this to you, AV. You may, at some point, I had a kind of a carrot and a stick scenario on lead generation. I'd say, okay, I'll do 20 calls a day. Unless I book a meeting, then I'm off the hook. And I didn't need 15, 20 meetings a week, AV, so a little bit different scenario, but you can tie a result in there as a scenario. You could say, I'll do 25 calls a day if I don't have if I don't have X amount of meetings set by 20. So it's just sort of it's a way of looking for the quality of results you want while you're doing the quantity of activity. So, Kathleen, it might be, I'll do X amount of minutes per day until I reach this point of completion, and then I'm off the hook, or then I celebrate, or then I'll give myself 4 days off, something like that. You combine it with an incentive to get shit done in addition to just doing stuff. Does that make sense? So that's the assignment for today is, well, number one, I'm going to make sure I've got these down on my end. So it's 20 calls a day for AV every business day, minimum. I know the ideal is higher than that. Kathleen, it's 30 minutes, so we'll just call it what? Organization every day, is that correct? Or do I have that right? You're on mute.
Yes, that works.
Okay, 30 minutes a day of organization. And Keith, I don't know, 2.5 hours. That's the minimum, Keith? That's the absolute bare bone minimum, 2.5 hours a day. Is that right? All right. When do you sleep? 2.5 hours a day. And I would encourage you, man, to put a reward on the end of this thing when you pass this test, something nice with you and your wife, have some fun. Is that when you're going to Cancun?
Good idea. Good idea. Yeah.
It might be a good time for it. So think about a reward for that when you get all that done. So I'm clear on your disciplines. We got 30 minutes, 20 calls, and 2.5 hours. So on the personal side, these are all professional disciplines. Mostly, in the case of organization, could include non-professional, but that's mostly on. I believe that's almost exclusively on the professional side for Kathleen. On the personal side, looking at your more or less method, think about something that will support you with the emotional state that you want and the characteristics that you want more often. These are personal disciplines that ultimately have an impact on us professionally. So that's your homework for the week, is carve out a personal performance standard that previously you were uncommitted to or inconsistent with. So for example, 10 minutes a day of devotional. AV talked about that last week. It could be 10 minutes a day of affirmations. It could be writing in a gratitude journal every day, something that will support you in manifesting the consistent emotional, mental experience of life that you want. And we're going to see, you'll see very clearly during this time that this absolutely impacts all of the professional disciplines, all the professional choices, and the professional outcomes when you're working on that pivot point with your internal game, these personal disciplines. So I'm going to close with that. If any of the three of you want to articulate one of those or ask about that or ask anything about the blueprint that we talked about, now is the time. Do you have an idea on a personal discipline? Do you have any clarifications on that? That's your homework, is have a personal performance standard set where some previously was not set. It could be as little as 10 minutes a day or less of something. I'll do 1 hour less of social media every day, or I'll just limit my social media. I work with one of the top business women in the entire country that worked with Advocare, and her discipline was to minimize her social media down. I think it was down to 2 hours. She did a lot of business on there, but she also just let it be a time waster, and that just carved out extra time for higher value activities. But look for something that's personally you can do more of or less of, and please be prepared for that. The blueprint, if you don't, well, we'll send it to you anyway. Most of you, I think all of you have it. Start filling that out. So Kathleen, put Heather's name on there. Put other people in there that you might want to connect with, even if it's just from a standpoint of reaching out to say hello, getting some input, having a virtual coffee, and learning from that person. People that you can input into, those are your mentees, peers and partners. How do you combine with other people? Even if you're a solo practitioner, you still have people that out there that can support you that are either inside or outside the company. Start filling those things out. And your personal.
Did you send us the format for that?
I sent it to you in one of our previous emails, but I'll get it. We'll get it out in this follow-up email as well.
Like it's just a picture.
It's a picture
of each quartile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a picture. There is nothing you could do.
We'll get it out. I'll get it out on this call again.
Okay.
So that's your marching orders. That's your assignment. Any questions, comments, or clarifications on anything that we talked about? Thank you for telling me, Kathleen, that you didn't know what I meant by performance standard. I apologize that was not crystal clear. So that's a mental note for me. Any questions, contributions, or clarifications from anything on this call today?
Yeah, the focus thing. How much of this are we supposed to get completed?
Just start filling out the pieces that just start a preliminary. If you've got parts of the puzzle that are already there, put them on there. So if Heather's if Heather's on there, put her name on there. If there's people that have come to mind that you could be peers and partners with, put their name on there. If there's choices on there, just list those choices. Just start working on it. I'm not going to ask you for that next week. And what I'm going to ask you for is what's a personal performance standard that you articulated between now and the next call, and then how the professional standard is going.
Got it.
Any other questions or clarifications, Keith?
Go ahead, AV. Did you have a question?
I'm a little lost in the process here. So we got done the the purpose. And you said, how does that correlate to what we're doing now?
The higher purpose exercise. So the higher purpose exercise and the more or less method are to start looking at your higher, like just the experience of life you want more of and who you want to be more of. So I recommend you get centered and focused in that and have the choices come from that. Have the choices bring about performance standards that are measurable, that are doable, that are time bounded, that do not exceed 90 days. So we're starting with this big, starting with the why, getting down to the who, and then the experience we want in our business, and what are the and life, and then what are the choices that come from that, carving those out into specific, consistent performance standards that are uncompromised.
Got it.
You just carved out one call, 20 calls a day. It's completely in line with the experience of life you want in the business. It's consistent with the woman you're committed to be, and it's a dead-on, perfect criteria fit for where you are right now. What minimum, drop dead, no less than $100 every single week, 20 calls every business day. So you're dead on with that. Okay, and the more you feed into your why, the more you're present to your purpose. It won't necessarily make those calls easier, but you'll do them more. You'll be more effective with them. You may still have to grunt it out and do them, but you're focused on that why. You want to serve women. You want to be empowering to others. Bring that with you on every call.
Gotcha. Now for next week, we have to do a rough draft or anything?
Just, you don't have to fill it out. You don't have to turn it into me. Just start working on the blueprint, start filling stuff out. We'll unpack it some more next week. What you're going to bring next week is a performance standard in the area of your personal life that previously was not dialed in.
Gotcha. Thank you. No problem.
Keith?
Yeah, actually, you answered my first question. So basically, you look at your more or less and your higher purpose, just looking at that and come up with choices, right?
That's right.
And then with that choices, if I hear you correctly, let's say if I have a choice one, which is on the core worksheet, right? And see how that it impacts you. But that choice, I guess what we talked about today is in terms of going ahead and actually act on those choices, it should have certain standards. Right?
Yeah, so a choice could be something as simple as I'm going to reach out to this person and call. And that choice makes an outcome, it develops ripples, and it creates expectations. A performance standard is I'm going to reach out to 5 high-level net worth potential clients way above my comfort zone, my current comfort zone. I'm going to reach out to these 5 people that meet this criteria 5 times every single week, outside of the norm of what I normally do. So it's something you're not normally doing, and you're going to do it consistently for this next 7 weeks and pay attention to the impact of that choice. That's a standard, a choice that's turned into a standard.
So choices, so basically to use your example, let's say reaching out to some prospective clients, that's a choice, right? But with performance standards in place, right? You don't just reach out to them, you follow your specific standards. Just like, if it was a business, there's a like operation standards or something, right? So
now you're talking about the quality of the actual reach. What I'm talking about right now is the difference between my choice is I'm going to reach out to Heather. That's a choice. And there will be an outcome from that. There will be some ripples from that. There will be something that's possible that's created from that one choice. The standard is saying I'm going to reach out to 5 Heathers every single week. 5 people that meet these criteria every single week, where previously I wasn't doing it at all. So that's a standard. I'll do this every week, 5 times a week, 5 times a day, 10 times a day between now and the end of this 7 weeks. I'll evaluate that standard in such a way that I can see stuff that's happened that never would have happened otherwise if that standard wasn't in play.
So basically performance standards is more of a scaled version of your one choice.
It's a consistently implemented choice over the course of time. 21 to 90
that-
days. So you've got one dialed in right now. It's called 2.5 hours of study every day between now and the 20th. That's a standard. So you can have, what I'm suggesting is you create a standard in in your personal life, something that previously has not been implemented that will support you in being at your best mentally, emotionally, and otherwise.
So whenever we come up with a choice, is the point here to put those, 3 criteria to that choice so that you're more intentional about doing these choices?
Yes, for at least one of those choices, put those 3 criteria in, and we'll talk about that one next week. Yes.
Okay. And how about how is today's this performance standards, the circle, right? How does it fit into our agenda? Here's week 2, focus, choices, structure, and execution. How does that?
Let me put you on, let me share my screen. Hang on a second. So this is focus. This is what we're working on with the higher purpose and the more or less. Those exercises should lead to choices. We've talked about some choices already. The standards are a way of.
The screen is blank.
Oh boy. Okay. I don't know.
You can see it.
You can see it? Oh.
Okay, sorry. It just says.
Well, here's the choices. Here's the choice. Here's the focus. Here's the choice. Outside of that choice is the implementation, and what you can't see, Kathleen, is tools, standards, structure, and models. So the standards will be a way of turning that choice, as you said, Keith, exactly, turning that standard into something you use the word scalable. I'm just going to use the word that's consistently implemented over the course of a period of time, 21 to 90 days. In this case, you've got one for 5 weeks. I'm going to recommend you have one between now and at the very minimum, the 8 weeks that we're together, and a maximum of 90 days. So those are the choices carved out within that criteria of more, manageable, and medium term. Does that answer that question?
Yes. And so structure, models, and tools, is that something that we're going to talk about in upcoming sessions? Or?
That's right. We're talking about structure, models, and tools. Right now, we're just unpacking the standards. We'll talk about structure, models, and tools in the upcoming weeks.
Okay.
All good? Thanks. All right. Melissa will get you the blueprint. I've got notes on your commitments. And if you want to ping me in the meantime, you're always more than welcome to. And if you have the higher purpose filled out and you're willing to share that, I would love to see it. Any other questions, comments, clarifications, or contributions? AV, was that a you? Was that a finger? No, that's a no. No more. Okay. All right. Awesome. So remember, the 3 steps of ripple effect are choose, stay the course, pay attention. So when you choose, make sure you stay the course, and most importantly, pay attention to the impact of that choice. So next week, be ready with a choice, an outcome, a ripple, expectations to start the call with a performance standard in there of your personal life that has not yet been articulated, and we'll go from there. Any other questions, comments? All good?
Yes.
All right. Awesome. I will be available as my intention is to be available on all these calls for at least 30 minutes after the call. So I do have that carved out. So if I'm not available, it means I'm on the phone with one of you. So feel free to ping me or call me directly after we get off this call. All right. Awesome.
Thank you.
Powerfully. See you next week at the latest.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.